Sometimes I just see a picture of a rule set and I become interested in it. And that was the case with Cairn. It was something about the art, and then when I looked at it, the length that got me interested in it and thinking it would be something appropriate and indeed very desirable to do as a solo demo. And indeed, looking at the inspiration for it here, this is an adventure game inspired by the likes of Into the Odd and Knave, two games that I've done on the channel that I really feel work excellently as solo material. We are going to explore a mysterious woodland filled with all manner of creatures, fey and fell, pillage ancient barrows, steal powerful spellbooks, and slay horrid beasts. And we can see the credits here, and I thank the designer for sending me this physical copy of the book to show to you. In this game, the DM is called a warden, and it is, of course, said that it is an adventure game for one facilitator and at least one other player. As you know, if you're watching this video, I'm going to be acting as both the warden and the player. I feel like I'm going to just do one character. I don't know. Well, no, I think I'm going to do two. Probably going to do two PCs and whatever else I do. I do want to call your attention to this CairnRPG.com website where you can get the game as well as a ton of online resources to support this. I may be actually going there in the video. I'm not sure yet. Usually I don't involve online materials like that in my game sessions for the video because I like to show just what you can play without using anything online, which is what I prefer to do. However, this is an there are excellent resources there, including many other types of monsters and such that aren't in this slim volume, but we also may be building some of our own. A couple of principles to go through here. It has a narrative focus, and it is a game of exploration, teamwork, and planning, and talking. So all of these things bode very well for the soloist. I'm not going to go through the rules per se now at the outset of the video. We'll see them come into play as I go through it, but I'll say that we're basing here on three attributes: strength, dexterity, and willpower. And important to note, the HP that you're going to roll 1d6 to determine is the ability to avoid damage in combat. It's not health, so the death and such works a little bit differently here, that when you run out of, you can restore this HP. We can do healing throughout the session, and if we are damaged to a certain extent, then we start to get some detriments to our attributes. We are given a taste of what some of the monsters could be: a wood troll, a frost elf. I'm going to go to, so for my supporting materials that I want to use, or that have initially came to mind, is, well, first of all, I'm going to be using some of the general principles from my solo GM guide to organize my session, and these are not necessarily taking from the random tables in that book, although I might, but just some of the overall strategies that I put forward in that book for running solo sessions, and I'll try to remember to point those out when they occur. And I really want to use some material from Knock, and I thought immediately of this Gloomywood setting here, which is a micro setting for OD&D written in one day, and it is by Gabor Lux, and it is outside. You can see the map here. So this immediately came to mind as possibly the setting, the basis for it. In terms of setting the story, I want to use my own book that I just released, Wanderings, to roll on this Gothic table, which is, you can see I did my own video on it. I'll put the link down below explaining exactly what this is, but in brief, it is a lengthy literary table of excerpts from classic Gothic fiction that can provide settings or seed stories or anything. So I'm going to use that. And I'm probably also going to use, as I mentioned in a different video, the some Game Master's Apprentice cards. This is the steampunk deck, and I was torn between just the general fantasy, the steampunk, or maybe even the horror one, but I feel like the steampunk and maybe the fantasy mixed together might be useful. So at the outset, what we're going to do is, as I like to do, I'm going to start with the setting, the environment, and based on that, I'll figure out what character or characters we're going to run. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to roll on this D88 table to get some basis for the story, some either inciting incident or I don't know. We're going to see what we get here. And as I like to do, I read it in alphabetical order for the color of the dice. So that's going to be rolled up a 65. And what is a 65? 65. Hilda gazed into the duskiness whither she pointed, and there beheld a figure standing just on the doubtful limit of obscurity at the threshold of the small illuminated chapel. So right here we have a figure standing in front of a chapel. We actually have a name here, Hilda. I don't know if that, I was thinking when I put this together, not that people might just ignore these names, but maybe we'll, since we're using it at the outset, maybe that's going to be a PC or us, I don't know. Kenyon discerned him at the same instant, so we've got two people, and drew nearer with his torch, although the guide attempted to dissuade him, averring that once beyond the consecrated precincts of the chapel, the apparition would have power to tear him limb from limb. They both drew near enough to get as good a view of the spectre as the smoky light of their torches, struggling with the massive gloom, could supply. The stranger was of exceedingly picturesque and even melodramatic aspect. He was clad in a voluminous cloak that seemed to be made of a buffalo's hide, and a pair of these goatskin breeches with the hair outward. His eyes winked and turned uneasily from the torches, like a creature to whom midnight would be more congenial than noonday. "What are you?" said the sculptor, advancing his torch nearer, "and how long have you been wandering here?" 1,500 years, muttered the guide, loud enough to be heard by all the party. "Inquire not what I am, nor wherefore I abide in the darkness. Henceforth I am nothing but a shadow behind her footsteps. She came to me when I sought her not. She has called me forth, and must abide the consequences of my reappearance in the world." So that's a lot to digest. We have the suggestion here, many different ways to go, but what we have here is two people encountering a ghost or some creature that was called forth by a mysterious female character to be a shadow in her footsteps. She came to me. She came for help. There's a lot of suggestions here, and what I'm taking away is we've definitely got two characters, and based on this, I might just go with their names, Hilda and Kenyon. And so we've got the two characters, we've got the specter, and then we've got this mysterious woman who has called the specter forth. So I am going to pick up these, I'm going to pick up the steampunk cards and just pull out, I'm going to randomly go and see if we get from these some other framework here. But can we learn more about this? Guide, hopeful exposure. Guide, hopeful exposure. Well, maybe what this means is that the female, the person who's called forth this specter, this unknown she, is in need of help, and that our two PCs somehow with this ghost, the ghost is going to be, maybe the ghost is going to be like a helpful NPC, that our characters existing in the tangible world need to help this ghost find this unknown she, because it says, let's see, I am nothing but a shadow behind her footsteps. She came to me when I sought her not. She has called me forth. And then it says here, and must abide the consequences of my reappearance in the world. That, of course, sounds threatening, but I'm going to twist that a little bit, of course, as one can do. I'm going to twist that into something I got from here, which is the hopeful part. So this is at the scope of our story. We're going to have two PCs with an NPC ghost who needs their help in the tangible world somehow to find this mysterious she and help her in turn. That we need to help her somehow. Here, I think we know that it is nighttime, so we have our characters in the evening, and I'll figure out how to randomize exactly where they are when our story opens up. However, we don't even know who our characters are yet. And this is why I like to begin with setting, because I already have a feeling about what's going to be the emotion of this session and how it's going to go in terms of feeling. But who are our characters? And I guess now could be time to take a look at the choices here. But we can look here at the backgrounds and get a sense of the kinds of options there are. Let's see, it says choose or roll. I don't know. We could just give this a roll and see. I don't know. We want to. I think I have a sense of the story, so maybe I'll just give this a random roll and see, because the let's see, like this D20 here, the backgrounds they're going to maybe advance the story. I get a 6 on that. That's going to be a cleric. Okay. Well, I think the mention was made of a church, so. And 2 is a blacksmith and a cleric. All right. This requires a little bit of off-camera thought, and I will come back and we will place our blacksmith and our cleric somehow outside the church with this ghostly specter. I want to give the ghostly specter a little more, substance, as it were, because that's going to be an NPC that's going to be sort of coming with us in this story as we seek out this mysterious she who is in need of our help. All right, in the interest of time, I did my stat rolling off camera, and I've got my blacksmith and my cleric. I haven't decided who's going to be who, but we'll do a few rolls on camera just to talk about the ways in which what is offered here helps to develop the story and the types of characters here. And the first thing I'm going to go to is this reputation. So we will do this randomly, and we will just roll for the reputation of the blacksmith, and we got an 8. So, the blacksmith is repulsive. Okay. All right. Well, the repulsive, I may turn this more into reviled, as in maybe the blacksmith is some type of outcast in some way. So the blacksmith may be repulsive to the community or whatever. I don't think I really want to have a repulsive character as one of my PCs, but nevertheless, the cleric is with somebody who is an outcast, and the cleric themselves is a bore. So we've got two kind of negative reputations here for our characters, but again, put together, I think this is immediately suggesting to me a story that the cleric and the blacksmith was an outcast, the cleric seen as a bore, as somebody who is imposing their will, I guess, on others without regard for what they care about, maybe was actually protecting this blacksmith. I don't know. We'll see. We still have to tie this again to our ghostly NPC. Their misfortunes. The misfortune of the blacksmith will be 8. The misfortune of the blacksmith is discredited. So that's working somehow with something. We got another 8. They're both discredited. Well, okay. I mean, that's going along with something here, that they have some idea perhaps about the world that was discredited and seen as, therefore they were seen as outcasts or something. Maybe that does tie to the NPC. We'll probably go to the adventurer's card deck to figure that out. I wanted to roll the hit protection of each of them, so show you that on camera. So our hit protection for the blacksmith will be a 5, and for the cleric it will be a 3. So perhaps thematically the cleric has a little less hit protection here. So we know from the setting that was established in the Wanderings book that it is foggy, it is gloomy, it is nighttime, deep in the night, really, probably midnight. Maybe it's the beginning of a new day, but we have many hours before the sun rises, and that we were standing in front of the ruins of a chapel. And I had mentioned I wanted to use this Gloomywood setting sort of as a suggestive place, and we do have indeed a ruined chapel here in Hex 1010, formerly a small but sturdy chapel and linked shelter, but it is now but a shell. The altar showing the birth of a hero is defaced to instead show their downfall. Should the altar be restored, a stone in the ground shall move aside and reveal the hero's resting place, a burial pit with bones in armor +1 and with a ring of protection. Now, it could be that this is the place from which our specter arose if it is a ghost. We feel that this ghost is going to be traveling with us in some manner. And looking at the map here, we're thematically suggesting that we have some dim sense of where we are. Looking around, the direction that is suggested to me by the name of the game, indeed, that we're playing, Cairn, is this direction. So we're here, and heading off in this direction through the forest first, we see this icon here, and we can read that these are tower ruins. Only a pile of rocks now, and its origins long lost. If the weather is good, the place has a strange glow, and sounds of laughter and merriment can be heard. The revelers are invisible, but if asked, they gift the petitioner with whatever. A pile of rocks, that's a cairn. And we are playing in the world of Cairn. And before we go any farther, I want to talk a little bit about what a cairn is, thematically what it means, and why it is suggesting to me that we are going to be going in this direction. We're going to head away from the ruined chapel, clearly into an undetermined forest area here as we make our way toward this cairn, because thematically this is going to tie into our goals of the story, which is to help in some way this deceased or departed she who has called forth the specter and making some attempt at a connection with the real world to get some aid in some way. Well, I have this concept that I was going to be able to show you the word Cairn here in the OED. It happens to be one of the ones that's right up top, but obviously it's not going to be possible to do that even with this and even with that. That's just not going to work out. But I do want to talk a little bit about the word Cairn because it obviously was intentional on the designer's part to name his game that. A pyramid of rough stones raised for a memorial or mark of some kind, as a memorial of some event or a monument over the grave of some person of distinction. It is found in all the Celtic languages, and around the 1700s, it says that to this moment there is a proverbial expression among the Highlanders elusive to the practice of adding stones to a cairn, and somebody will say, I will add a stone to your cairn, meaning when you are no more, I will do all possible to honor your memory. So all of this is very thematic in terms of the ghostly specter trying to honor the memory of this elusive she that they were connected to in some way. And we don't yet know how the cleric and the blacksmith are connected, but maybe they're all connected to this person, and they are attempting in this story to honor her memory in some manner, and that is really the what undergirds the journey that they're taking now into the forest toward the cairn. All right, so in the interest of time, I've done some rolling on items off camera, and we'll just quickly review what we've got, and then we're going to do one more roll here. We have the cleric's got a mace, a spirit ward, chalk, nails, a spell book, and we purchased a cook pot. No money left, and indeed the blacksmith gave 1 gold that she had to the cleric to purchase the cook pot, and we're going to stick with the 7 gold that we have left here. I rolled up the random, by the way, on these, and the blacksmith ended up with 2 bulky items. This brigandine armor, which gives only a value of 1. The cleric got no armor whatsoever. And a crossbow, doing d8 damage, but also a bulky item. So I'm ending up with the blacksmith having some bulky items, and I want to keep some slots empty here. I'm also giving a spell book to the blacksmith. Now, this is not per the rules, per se, because you are meant to be able to get a bonus item as a spell book if you roll only an 18 to 20. I'm not playing that way, and I'm stating that here up front in the video, and I'm going to show you, I'm going to roll randomly for the spells. I just want my characters to be able to use a spell, so I've decided that they're going to get 1 spell each with the spell book. I'm going to be leaving some slots empty, 2 here for the cleric and 1 here for the blacksmith, to account for the fatigue we need to acquire as we cast a spell, and also just to have a bit of a buffer, because when we are carrying our full limit, our HP, our resiliency is reduced to 0, and I don't want to start there. Fortunately, again, we've got this low HP, only 3 for the cleric with no armor, and 5 for the blacksmith, who ended up with an armor. But that was the random roll, and that's what we're going to stick with. So to get some spells, it's a D100 roll, and we will do that here and just see who gets what. So first we're going to roll for the blacksmith to see what spell they have. And, ooh, they rolled a 7. Attract. 2 objects are strongly magnetically attracted to each other if they come within 10 feet. Okay. Interesting. So the blacksmith's got the attract spell, and we've got a 47 for the cleric. Liquid air. The air around you becomes swimmable. I mean, I guess you could take that to, you could flood an area and you could swim in it and someone else could be drowned. Maybe, I don't know. But that's what we got. So we're going to add that in here and continue on. As we travel through the hexes to get to this cairn area, we know we're going toward a forest. I want to be very intentional about the travel procedure that we have. We know where we're setting out from, and we know that we are traveling in this direction here, which is going to take us through this. There is water here, actually. There's a river here I haven't really accounted for, but we're walking through initially hills and through the forest toward this cairn area. I've decided I'm going to use 2 supporting pieces of supplements. This is the Overland Encounters. This is part of the FlexTales toolkit, and I'm going to be doing a separate video on a lot of this material, but I'll be picking up some material from here, and I'm also going to use this wilderness dressing. I've done a video on this already with some other supporting material. The way I'm going to determine how I use it is this, and I've just sort of sketched this out. We'll go through it here. I'm going to try to adhere to it as best as possible to account for, in Cairn, the use of using up your torches, your rations and such, and time passing is something that is of significance. So I want to sort of adhere to that. And I've divided up each day into 6 4-hour segments, with marked off 2 of them needed for rest. We know we're starting out at midnight, so we're setting out. It is midnight and very, very early morning. Eventually it will become dawn. when it becomes dawn, we're going to do a loaded encounter roll. And I'm taking this, I'm modifying this from some Cairn supporting material, and you can see the credit for that up here, and I'll put this down below. This comes from the Cairn RPG website. As I mentioned, very useful supporting website. But my travel procedure is going to have me doing this. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to roll this die of fate, and this comes from Cairn itself, and we'll take a quick look at it here. It's a very simple mechanic that can be useful, particularly for the soloist, to sort of give a sense of direction of how the next 4 hours will go in terms of whether it will be inherently favorable to your party or not. Occasionally you will want an element of randomness. Well, we want this more than occasionally, with the weather, unique character knowledge, etc. In these situations, roll 1d6. A roll of 4 or more generally favors the players. 3 or under tends to mean bad luck for the PCs or their allies. So we're going to roll this actually every 4 hours just to kind of get a sense of how we're going to follow our flow chart. Pretty basic, but enough for me for right now. So on a favorable roll, we'll move to our D10. 1 to 7 is going to mean safe passage, and safe passage will translate into something narrative that I want to do at that moment. Maybe forage or search or something like that. Perhaps I'll roll on the GM's miscellany to provide a kind of neutral, maybe some negative, but mostly positive environmental development or something. So I'll have a 70% chance there. And I'll have a 20% chance then, in this case, of moving to something that's more like bad luck. And the bad luck is going to come from the overland encounters here. And when we get to that, I'll show you how this works. It's not going to be so super terribly bad. One of the things that FlexTale does is gives you random tables that are variegated. So you can roll on one that has more likely combat or less likely. Overall, I'm going to slant this in the direction more of events and encounters than strict combat, but combat could happen. This is certainly going to be worse luck. And if we set out on our roll of the die of fate with the bad luck, we're immediately going to go to the D10 in this regard, and it's going to be a 70% chance of the bad luck and a 30% chance of the good. So very simple flow chart here. And then, as I said, I'm pulling in at essentially the break of dawn, not exactly, but at 8 in the morning. We're going to do a different encounter roll. It's a D6, and it will give us a chance of having just a regular encounter as above, or of unexpectedly becoming exhausted and needing to rest, or to take on fatigue, or use up a torch or something like that, or maybe we'll discover something in a hex. So I think this should, and I will do this procedure for 4 times, and then we will be taking a rest, and that will be the end of one day. We will potentially travel, depending on what we get, travel through the hills, make our way to the forest, and we'll see. So the forest in this layout is maybe 1 to 2 days away. Maybe, we'll see. It's not going to be exact here. And also with our options here, we could just continue to travel on. So a loose structure for the hexcrawl aspect of it, but something that I'm at least trying to anticipate where I will go to get the supporting information to advance the story as we travel. All right, we're just going to give this a whirl with day 1 and see how our travel procedure goes. I'll be rolling the die of fate and then the sort of check die. So on the die of fate, we got something that's going to favor us, and this means we'll go down to the safe passage roll on my chart here, and this means with a 2, we're going to get to investigate something. So we've got our 2 characters here, and we don't really have a ton of dexterity here, but I'm going to do a search, and I'm going to attempt, Hilda the blacksmith is going to look around, and the way that I'm going to do this is based off of a mechanic in Ironsworn where you are going to be rolling 2 dice, and a strong hit will be a success on both, a weak hit will be a success on one, and then a strong fail will be a fail on both. So we're looking here, we're going against our dexterity stat to kind of look around and see how much we get to investigate. We need to get a 12 or above, and 12 or below. We got a strong hit. So Hilda the blacksmith is looking around these ruins, and she's going to actually find something, and it is going to be perhaps even something that is beneficial to us. And for that, we will go to our wilderness dressing. So we know that we were in the ruins here, and we are also in the hills. So I guess we'll go to, well, we've got small ruins and hills. So let's look at the small ruins first and see if there's something we find that could possibly be of use. So again, we're gonna look toward a favorable interpretation of whatever it is we find. And all right, give this a roll. We got 30 here. So 30 is going to bring us to, a faded gravestone stands in an unused sheep pen. The dirt around the grave appears to be recently disturbed. So with a favorable reading, we have wandered toward a gravestone, I think, that is going to be connected to our story directly, and the fact that it is disturbed is probably going to signal that this ghostly woman, perhaps her body has been exhumed by somebody, and the ghost that's with us is trying to tell us that we need to retrieve the body and bring the body back to this spot. The spot is not too far from the chapel where we began, and perhaps that's what's necessary to restore order to the land, that her physical aspect has to be returned to the body. And this is what we have learned as we have walked along. I think that sort of makes sense to me, and we are going to tick off the first mark here and continue along with our travel, knowing that we are now in search of perhaps whoever it was that stole her body, and perhaps we're looking for signs for who that might be. And to see as we continue on whether the die of fate is speaking favorably to us. It still is, and we got actually the same roll. So as we continue on, we're going to get to do another investigation of this area. And we're still in, I need to look back at our map, but we're going into, I think, the low mountains here. Let's check that out and confirm. Now, I've made the point in my solo GM guide that when you roll something repeatedly, or you're doing a random roll and you come up with very similar or exactly the same rolls, and in this case, I got the exact same roll to follow my procedure the same way, you might consider that as something leading you in the direction of thinking that this is a thematic signal, that your story is you're the narrator of your story, which is you, of course, but also a combination of the randomness and what you think of is pushing you in a thematic direction. And so for that, I decided to go to my my dictionary of symbols and look up. Remember, this is the blacksmith. This is Hilda the blacksmith, who is getting this same role as she's searching. And also, I did two things. Looking back at what I originally rolled here in our whole setting out of the story, it began with Hilda's gaze, the blacksmith's gaze. Now, we didn't know she was a blacksmith here. We built that in, but it begins with the gaze of the blacksmith. And I looked to my dictionary symbols to see if blacksmith was mentioned, and indeed there's actually a rather lengthy entry about the symbolism of a blacksmith, and I'm going to turn to it so we can see. It's quite interesting that this is going to talk about different cultures, but there is a theme here even within that. So their trade connects them with sorcery and magic, and this is why they are often more or less excluded from society, and why their labors are usually surrounded by ritual purification. So we know that our characters, our PCs, are outcasts from our own random roll, so that seems to work. And it says, in African cultures, the smith bears a somewhat enigmatic character, standing as the central figure at the heart of the problems posed by these civilizations. In the first place, he is the craftsman who fashions the iron tools needed by both hunters and farmers. The working life of the tribe depends upon his activities, so the blacksmith is seen as a life giver. He is the only person able to carve the statues of the ancestors and spirits who are the mainstays of their worship, and therefore plays a part in religious life. Interestingly, in our story, our blacksmith is paired with a cleric, a sign of religious life. So he also has the social role of peacemaker and intermediary, not only between the members of his tribe, but also between the worlds of the living and the dead. Now, this is incredibly related to the story, because at the outset I was thinking that that our PCs were encountering this specter who was asking for their help in either locating the she of the original story or something like that. But now, coming across this disturbed gravesite near the chapel, but not right there, the signal of separation, yet death, I think that the specter as well as the she are both deceased. Now, the specter is like called forth by Hilda somehow, who has the magical capacity to inhabit, not so much inhabit the realms of the living and the dead, but cross over and make that connection. And it says, because the smith is endowed with a semi-religious character, he arouses in others a degree of uncertainty and ambivalence towards him. While we know we are outcast, he is at one and the same despised and feared and reverenced, holding very different positions within the tribal hierarchy. Okay. And then finally here, it says the powers of the smith are essentially ambivalent and can be just as maleficent as they are beneficent. Hence, he inspires everywhere a reverential dread. So again, a fundamental ambivalence with the blacksmith, with Hilda. Hilda's gaze has created our story and brought us into this story, but it is an ambivalent one, and we're not really sure whether or not this is for good or for evil. So we're going to go and we're going to continue to search around with this in mind, that we will see sort of what we see here. It's going to be a random event. Now, for our events here, we are in the hills, so we're going to go to our encounter book here and roll on the hills area, and we're looking to column C for this. This is a D20 roll to see, as we're continuing to look around in this area, we rolled a 10. Splinter trees. All right, let's see the splinter trees event. The trees in this area might be sentient or might simply be reacting to movement. You don't have enough time to consider the underlying reasons, though, because you're too busy trying to dodge the needle-like darts of pine and thorn that they are flinging your way. When you encounter this event, the splinter trees fling 1d6 darts at your party. For each dart, randomize which party member is targeted. We can attempt a dexterity or reflex or a spell save to avoid the dart completely. And if you're not dodged, you're going to suffer some damage here. And then there's a procedure for determining how many waves of darts continue on. And wow, they could even do 36 darts along the way. We could be killed by these darts. Okay, we get advantage after more than 3 rolls. All right, so the calm of, well, the relative calm and gloom of this, it's about 4 a.m. now, is disturbed by going to be these splinter trees. and they're going to fling 1d6 darts at our party. So let's start by figuring out how many darts we are going to go here. Of course. So 6 darts at the party. For each dart, randomize which party member is targeted. All right, so to figure this out, let's see. We're going to go... all right. So Hilda is going to be odds, and Kenyon is going to be evens, and we'll just go through the darts and see. So for dart number 1, that's going to target Hilda, and I'll just keep a track of this off camera. That's going to be Hilda. That's dart 1. Kenyon is dart 2. Dart 3 is also going to go to Kenyon. Dart 4 is going to go to Hilda. Dart 5 is going to go to Kenyon. And dart 6 is going to go to Hilda. So evenly divided between the two of us. And now we're going to do a dexterity save or spell save to avoid the dart completely. So they're each going to have to do 3 saves. And we already looked at dexterity, in fact. So let's see what we got here. So Hilda's dexterity is 12. So she's going to do her... I don't think I have 3d20s. I do have 3d20s. All right, so let's see, how many of these things can she avoid? She's got to roll under 12, so she's going to get she's going to get hit by 2 darts. And mark that off camera. And then for Kenyon, his dexterity is even poorer. He's only got an 8. That's not looking good. So I don't remember. I'll have to check off camera whether that's a hit, but he's definitely got 2 or 3 hits. And let's go back to see what it says. For each, they are going to suffer 1d4 points of damage. So we will see what Hilda's got here. It's hard to have all your dice at the ready. I think I've only got... All right, I've got to roll this twice because I don't have another d4 out right now. All right, so she's got, of course, 3 and 1. So Hilda's down 4 points of damage. All right, so Kenyon did that. He only got the two hits, so he's got 1, 2. So he's got 2 damage. So they're going to suffer this to those resilience points. So he's got 2 damage, 2 points of damage, and she's got 4. And now let's go back to her. Her HP, so she's down to 1 right now. And he had the 2, so they're both down to 1. Both down to 1. And let's see the rest of this procedure here. After the initial wave, roll 1d6. If you roll equal to or less than the number of dart waves you suffered already, they relent. But we've only suffered 1, so I've got to roll a 1 or less, or there's going to be another wave. Oh my God. Okay. All right. Wow. Okay. Well, luck was with us there. And okay. So we are down to 1 HP each, but we have escaped this, and we are now, it is just about to be dawn is happening. So we are going to get to our special encounter roll. As dawn arises, we are probably lying under this, or pulling out these barrage of things that we've been attacked with here as we continue on. And we're going to roll this special encounter die. Let's use this one, doesn't really matter. And we rolled a 3, and a 3 is going to be the environmental random exploration table. And we will pull that up and see as dawn arises and we look around, what do we see? So for this, we're down to wilderness dressing table, and we are in the hills. So we're going to roll first just on the general hills dressing. We'll see what we see here, 75, and we look around and we see, oh, a near perfect rock dome. Its cracks color deep black like a web-shaped scab tops the hill. A rock dome is a cairn. I promise you, this is just random rolling. However, well, two things, of course. Number one, choosing your source material appropriately. So I'm choosing something that is giving me things that could be in hills, and we're traveling in hills. So that's number one. I don't know what all these other things are here, but it's thematic. And number two, having such a strong sense of the theme already. And of course, in this case, I just went with the obvious. This is the whole name of the game. In any case, this, what I pick up here, is a near perfect rock dome. So this is the cairn. Now, we were traveling toward, in our original travels here, and I haven't been particular about sort of the actual distance that we were going. We were trying to get to here. We were leaving here, and we were moving through the forest here. The description here was to be the ruins, only a pile of rocks now. Its origins long lost. If the weather is good, the place has a strange glow, and sounds of laughter and merriment can be heard. And then if it's bad, something else. But this is saying to me that perhaps as we have survived that barrage from the possibly sentient trees, possibly not, we come to see a near perfect cairn. Its cracks color deep black like a web-shaped scab. It's atop a hill. We see it in the distance, so we're not quite there yet, but we know we're on the right track. Now, let's see. I'm going to roll on the hills minor events. Let's just, let's give us an event. I don't know. Who knows? This is what I feel like doing. 84. And so we see off in the distance, we see where our destination, and we also see an abandoned campsite, several days old, has a map of the local areas drawn in the earth, and X marks a spot just over a nearby ridge. Well, I'm just going to go with, that's not so much an event as just confirmation. I'm going to read that as just sort of confirmation that we as the dawn approaches, and so we can check off this part. So it is dawn now. That was in the dawn. We are getting confirmation that we are going in the right place. And I'm just going to continue to roll along. I think we're going to go back to our travel die here and see. So far the world has been favorable toward us, and it continues. The die of fate is continuing to favor us, and we're rolling a D3 here. We got a clear search on Ferratory, and that's on page 27, and we'll see what that is. Is that the same? Is that where we were? Oh my gosh, that is literally where we were. So the theme here of investigation is just coming up incredibly strong, and as we continue to search here with the D10, we get a minor treasure stashed away, and there's a list of minor treasures here. It's a D8 list, and so we're going toward this cairn, and we see a charcoal, let's get that in there, charcoal black chalice. Now, I think there was a reference to something very dark here, right, with this rock thing. Let's go back and read this description here. Yes, deep black and charcoal black chalice is partially hidden here. And of course, if you're inside my head, perhaps you'll know that what I want to do right now is I want to see what the symbolism of a chalice could possibly be. If it's in my book of symbols here, of course it is. There's a long entry. All right, I'm going to need to look through this entry. Well, super interesting here because there's two essential aspects to the extensive symbolism of the chalice. That's a vessel of plenty and that of a vessel holding the draught of immortality. And we can continue on. I'm not going to read all of this, but we see that it's an expression of immortality or of knowledge purchased at the cost of death to this present state of existence. And further, that it holds the principle of life. It's a vessel. It is considered to be, could be a book. The twofold meaning really is revelation and life. And interestingly, we obviously have the religious aspect of the Eucharistic chalices that I'm not going to get into here, but the main point is that could symbolize the knowledge purchased at the cost of death. And so what that is saying to me here is that, and the essence of revelation, that this chalice holds the secret to the mystery that was at the outset of our story with Hilda's gaze, going way back to the reading that set off our story, that this mysterious she, the answer to her need, and what this mysterious specter, who, by the way, has been traveling along with us, is trying to do, the answer to that is in this chalice, and that once we get that, we will sort of have attained the revelation. Now, what is that revelation? Well, I don't know. That is a question that could be left unanswered. It is a question that if I were playing this along as a full session, as opposed to showing you a part of it for this video, I would decide what was going to be revealed with this chalice, and that would maybe take me to another segment of this story. But for now, for this video, given the length and given what we have established, we have our PCs here traveling with this ghost, seeing in the distance a partially revealed answer, partially revealed revelation to the mystery of, perhaps the mystery of life, perhaps the mystery of death. What was the haunting that created the death of these characters? I will say that it's occurred to me at a certain point in the video that maybe even our PCs are already dead. Now that's something that's just way off. You could make that happen, of course, but just putting that out there, that maybe they're all on the other side of life, and what they're looking for is a way to get back to the living. In any event, I'm going to leave this here with these questions, because I think I have shown enough in this demo how you could develop the story, and using the basis of this Cairn rule set. And what came out of this most substantially, I think, for us, was the concept of Cairn, as well as this concept of the blacksmith, and the occupation of a place close to death, close to life, perhaps in death, perhaps in life, we don't know. And of course, we're all in life close to death, because the very smallest of things, or the very largest of accidents, could bring you from life to death. And here, our PCs have reached a place where they see half hidden the answer, their revelation, and in the next actions that they take, they will pull this chalice out and then begin to investigate it. Now, if I were continuing this video and playing it along, I would probably come up with a new set of supporting materials, because I think what I would want to do would be really go into developing a story, move away a little bit from the action of my PCs, but really try to go back in time and create perhaps the character of the she and create perhaps the character of the specter using Cairn, but seeing who those two characters were before they died. So I would want to veer back in time and do that story. And then when I had that story, then come back and show how it was connected to the cleric, who we didn't really, cleric turned out not to be active in our story right now, the cleric and the blacksmith. And then perhaps also create a way that the cleric and the blacksmith were related to each other and use that to develop some further themes to take me forward. Hope you've enjoyed this look inside Cairn. It's a wonderful short rule set inspired by Into the Odd, Knave, and offers a great deal of flexibility and jumping off points for all sorts of narrative stories.